Okay, back to life. We are now in the Gemara Shir after the short Purim break. Here we are in Me'am Loez, Ramad B'Shemesh, in Masechet Shabbos, Daf Kuf Lamed Tes Amud Beis, in the very, very, very bottom of the page. The parak we're learning is parak Toilin, and we are discussing halachos of boirer, and soon we're going to see halachos of lash. Today's issue will be the not so easy halacha of lash, defining lash and exceptions to the rule when lash kneading is okay, when it's not okay. It's not going to be difficult, but whatever the melech in general is. Basically, the shir as always is Leon Nishmas, my father, Menachem ben Akiva, and for the quick release of the hostages who are under very hard conditions. May Hashem release them very, very soon. Okay, oops, I'm sorry for that. So we said at the very bottom of the page, Noisnin beitza b'mesanenes. We said in the Mishnah, the one is allowed to place a beitza, which is no raw egg, b'mesanenes shel chardal, meaning if you are making chardal mustard, and you have the mesanenes that separates the chardal, the mustard seeds, from whichever refuse there is. The mustard seeds, they fall into the bowl. You want to make them softer. They would almost be liquidy. Chardal back then, the mustard, I have a feeling it was more liquidy than what we have today. And in order to add color to the chardal, you'd also break into that sieve that's on top of the bowl, where you put the chardal through, you filter it through. You also put the beitza. What would happen with the beitza? The yellow part, the yolk, which adds color to the chardal, that would go down, and the white part, which is a bit harder, right? It's a bit whatever, not as liquidy, more solid, that would stay on top. Obviously, the question is, why isn't that border? Tani Yaakov Kocho says Yaakov Kocho in the Brisa, the fishen oisin oisoi ela legavan. Because you only make it for color, that's why, because the function, the usage of the yellow of the egg, of the yolk is only for color, that's why it's okay and it's not bor. Obviously, that begs the question, what do you mean it's only for color? You separated good from bad. So first of all, Rashi says, you can look in Rashi. Rashi says the first line, lemare, it's for the good looks. Sha'achel yofe legavan v'lo ochel boin. Yeah, the yellow gives rich, nice yellow color to adds color to the mustard. Lo ochel boin, the white part does not. Hilkach, idi v'di oichelu. Both are foods. Enken be'os p'soichel moichel. Says Rashi, because it's meant for color. This one is good. Each one has its own good quality, star in its own right. The yellow one goes down to the chardal to add color. The white one is not garbage. You can eat it too. Keep it for later and eat it. And with separate food from food, that's okay. It sounds like separating food from food is fine. So the truth is, as I told you before, according to Rashi, that could be true. You know, there are people who break their heads over it, but I'm sorry to say, the Achroinim, they didn't learn the sugya. Lanius daiti. Why? Because in Dafin Dalad Mudalef, it's not mefurash, but it's quite it's hinted quite thickly. The Rashi, if you learn the sugya well, Rashi does believe that food from food is borer, only bad from good, or sometimes good from bad, depends on other conditions. But when you talk about oichel moichel, Rashi's gears over there was not. There is no problem. However, yeah, I can show you later. Absolutely, Dafin Dalad Dalef. Now, what will the other Rishonim say? The Rach, the Tosfos, those who hold that Oichel Moichel is a problem, and that's halacha. What would they say about this business? Who cares? That's for color and that's for food. So what? You're still separating them. One stays on top of the sieve, the other one on the bottom. So shkoyach. Still bad. Halachal ma'is. You're not allowed to separate food from good, right? You can't take a whole bunch of I don't know. You're playing with a grandchild. You can't take all the Lego pieces, which are all matched together, mixed together, and separate the green pieces alone, the red pieces alone, and the yellow pieces alone. Each one a separate group. The answer is very nicely Meduik in the Gemara. Ein oisin oisel gavan, because it's only meant and made for color. It doesn't have an entity of its own, as explained already before. If the yellow is only there to enhance the color of the chardal, and right away gets absorbed, it never stays on its own. It just becomes something secondary. So you separated nothing from something. As you separated, you don't have two chavilos. We don't have two separate packages, three different batches, green, red, and yellow. Yeah, knives, forks, and teaspoons. No, you have the chardal mixed right away with the color of the chardal. Chardal is not color, is nothing serious, so to speak, nothing that has its own self value, and therefore that's not called bar. That's a pshat, and that's a mashma and a tzifra alocha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. Okay, lash. Basically, without trying to deter you, la news daiti lash is the hardest malacha of Shabbos. I dare say that, in my humble opinion, and those of others. So, don't run away. We're not going to go through the entire intricacy of all the intricacies of Lash. This Gemara will only deal with one aspect of Lash, which is Beshinui. So, before we continue, let's give a small introduction. Lash means kneading. The Agdora, we're flying now all the way to our generation. Reb Nissim Karelitz defines, not just him, but I saw it mentioned in his name. Lash kneading means when you take liquid and solid, and the liquid causes all the solid pieces to be one, to be together. Right? That's what happens when you knead dough. Right? How does the flour, all the grains of flours, how do they become one? Kind of united into a new entity, with the water uniting them, making them into one mess. Right? Good. Now, in Lash, there are two stages to Lash. One stage of Lisha is when the water hits the flour and already some kind of a chemical reaction begins, right? You don't have proper dough. I'm sorry. You don't you don't have proper dough, but you definitely don't have flour and water separate anymore. It's already kind of, not so nicely touched together. And that's called, that moment is, that's the Nesinas Sakemach, or Nesinas Maim, the Nesina. According to Rebbe in Daf Yudches and in Daf Kuf Nun Vov, if I remember correctly, that moment already chayv lisha, according to Rebbe. The moment you already created the chemical reaction, even though they did not become one mess, but you already changed something in the molecular, definitely changed there, right? They already become sticky, and at that point of contact where the water touched the flour, something happened. That something is good enough. Mashenke, and according to Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda, he says no. You only chayiv medoraisa once you gibul, once you megabel them, once you properly knead them, you make them into one thing. You make it more, homogenic all over, the same viscosity all over. That's when you chayiv on lisha. Yeah, the shal is the nesina or the gibul. Okay. Now another point. We can actually start now. Itma. One more point before we continue. I promise the last part of the introduction. Lisha means taking. I want to ask you a question. How come you're allowed to make coffee on Shabbos? You have the relatively solid parts, the coffee granules, or the coffee powder, the Nescafe, and you add water, it becomes one thing. That's allowed. Why? Because that's called blila, more than blila raka. In other words, it didn't become one solid piece, congealed mess. Thank you for the nicer word in English. It becomes completely liquidy, as liquidy as before. And the powder, on the contrary, did not do right. The water didn't make it into one congealed mess, but rather the whole thing just mixed together in a completely liquidy, very liquidy form. Right? That's called, there's blila ava, blila raka. This is super raka, which means we have to understand something very important. And sometimes it's not so easy to define it. The lisha means taking something liquid and solids together, liquid and powder together, or something similar to powder, and make them into one mess, one congealed mess, right? As opposed to if you make it more liquidy, if you dilute it, if you add too much water, make it more diluted, that's not lisha. It's the other way around from lisha. It's the opposite of lisha. When you make something that's already liquidy more diluted, trina. They say if you have trina and you add more water, more lemon juice into the trina, make it more runny, that should be allowed on Shabbos. Not a poisik, as far as I know, it's allowed because it looks like you're mixing the hard and the soft. Really, the idea is making it softer, not more congealed, more en masse, but rather the other way around, more runny. With that in mind, we can start. There are two completely different ways of learning the sugya. We'll start one way and then maybe explain the other way. Itma. Chardal shalashoy me'erev Shabbos. So again, as I told you before, the chardal the mustard was Nilosh Merev Shabbos. The chardal was, according to Mishnah Berurah, I'm going now, there are two shittas in the Rishonim. One shitta is the Bir Halacha. I saw this Bir Halacha a few times. Hope I'm doing justice to it. The chardal was kneaded. You had the granules of chardal. You know, there are the small pieces, the powder. Lashu, you already kneaded it with a little bit of water from Friday. So that initial contact of already having the water and the flour or the mustard together happened on Friday, right? So you already have the mess. What are you doing now? The macho, tomorrow on Shabbos, what do you want to do with it? You want to add water. Amarav mimachle b'kli v'lo b'yad. You're allowed to lemachot, you're allowed to dilute it. According to Yolocha, you're allowed to dilute it with a kli, but not with your hand. Explains the Mishnah Berurah. We're talking here about not lisha. We're talking about diluting. Diluting should be allowed. But diluting is not allowed, you know when? Diluting is not allowed when it's similar in action to lash. Even though diluting is in a way opposite, but it's similar actions, right? You're mixing the hard and the soft together. So even diluting has its limitations, of course, only with the Rabbanon. He says, Dami Lisha, looks like Lisha. So when you do it, you have to do it with a kli, with a spoon, fork, knife, with, let's say, with a normal kli, with, let's say, a spoon, not with your hand. Why? He claims that doing it with a hand is better. When you do use your own hand, may not be so aesthetic, as we'll see later, and maybe not so hygienic. Hope he washed his hands with a lot of soap. But I guess the touch, the human touch, gives it a better, feel, better mixture. And therefore, you should do it the opposite way. The mutter way is when it's more different, yeah, it's more different to lisha when it's beyad, bekli, but not beyad. Amar Shmuel says Shmuel beyad. Are you serious with a hand? That's the way to do it the entire week, and that's on Shabbos. It's not allowed. That's a shinui. Atu kol yom memachol biyad. You want to tell me that people actually memache the dilute, making the chardal more runny using their hands? Machal chamoirimu. Is that the foot of donkeys? In other words, you may be right, my colleague Rav, that it's more professional. It's better effect. That's a better effect with your own hands. You feel with your hands. Once a guy who was working with meat in the supermarket with his hands, he said the dafka were told to use their hands because it's better. I don't know the whole Torah. You feel the meat better. You know what's going on, the softness of the meat, etc. But says Shmuel Lamaisa, that's not normal. The normal way of human beings is not using your hands. You do it for donkeys, not for people. Says the Chazon Ish Hanachnam, if you use a glove, would be good. But to use it with a hand is disgusting. So you don't do it during the week. And Amar Shmuel, therefore says Shmuel, you know it's called the shinui, where diluting is okay. On Shabbos, because you're always supposed to do the other way around than the rest of the week, and not bekli. Dafka with your own hand, yeah, you want to be memache and dilute the chardal in water, do it with your hand, but not with the proper kli, because that's a crazier, more shinudik way. Itma, soon I'll explain the other way. Everything I'm telling you now, again, remember when I say diluting, I'm saying it on purpose. Diluting is not lash. Diluting is not lash. Diluting is the other way around. When you dilute it the normal way, yeah, then it's similar to lash and then becomes awesome darabona. But if you dilute it the crazy way, there's no reason to answer it. It's not lash and it's not even similar to lash. The effect is not lash and the action is not lash, so it's allowed. Yeah.
Can you give it more explicit, like the crazy way versus the regular way?
Here we are. Here we are. That's a good question. Depends who you ask. According to Rav, crazy means less professional, and therefore don't do it with your hand. Because if you do it with your hand, that's better effect. It has more feinschmeck. Says Shmuel. Shmuel was a doctor, you know. You're not supposed to use your hand during the week. It's not normal. It's not hygienic, not aesthetic. Therefore, on Shabbos, you're allowed to do it. You're always supposed to do it the other way around from the rest of the week. When I said crazy, I meant the opposite of the rest of the week. Very good. Now, I have to stress, it's not a regular shinui. You're not doing a malacha that's osur, but with shinui. Only when it is yes the normal way, it becomes similar to lash, that becomes osur. We're going to talk about the other way soon. Bezos Hashem. Itmar comes a third opinion and a fourth opinion. Says no, I don't believe in this shinuim. I think both yad and kli are both scaringly similar to lash. both awesome darbonon. It's similar to lash. It's not enough of a shinui. We'll see later a different shinui. Rabbi Yochanan amar echad ze vechad ze mutar. Rabbi Yochanan says they're both mutar. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there was never a gzera. Diluting is not lash. Lash is not diluting. Yeah, and the twain never meets. Then no such thing. You can do whatever you want. Yad kli, whatever you want. Even if it's similar, it's not really similar. Here you're connecting and you're diluting. No problem. However, let's see. At the beginning, now comes something very interesting. Originally, now we're going to see a big shift and change in halacha. Bible unanimously said, "En halacha Rabbi Yochanan." Rabbi Yochanan is super mekel, and he allows you to mache, dilute, and add more water. Halacha is halakim to mekel. However, Kam Rabbi Yochanan b'shit seder Blazer. All the Amoraim here are changing their minds now. Rabbi Eliezer changed his mind and moved to the spot, switch sides to be like Rabbi Eliezer that said that both are osir. Kam Rabbi Eliezer on his side became more makel k'shitze de Shmuel. Rabbi Eliezer said it's all osir. Here he came more makel, more lenient, and held like Shmuel that said what? That really it's allowed bekli and not it's allowed biyad, not bekli. It's not complicated. The maskon is very easy. Abai Aha. Abai and Rava were both machmir in the subject. Depends now if Rabbi Yochanan is on their side. Great. Originally they went against Rabbi Yochanan. The new Rabbi Yochanan who said that both are osur, Abai and Rava are accepting him with open arms, and they say, great. Halachic Rabbi Yochanan that either way is what osur to do midarabanon to dilute either yad or kli. Abaye's stepmother or nanny, he didn't have a mother. Yeah, she made him that chardal either using your hand or a kli. It doesn't matter. Why? Because Abai believes, like the new Rabbi Yochanan, Lekrove, every way, anyways, also yad or kli. They're both too similar to the normal way. Because asvaros lechan lechan. This is cleaner. This is better. At the end of the day, both ways are similar to lash. Dvisu de Zeira's wife, Abdel el Rav Chia Barashi. She made the chardal for the Talmid of her husband, Rav Chia Barashi. He didn't eat it. Or she gave him musar. The wife of the Amor gave him musar. The Rabbi Chochavidile v'ochal v'at lo ochad. I make it for your own Rav, and he eats it, and you don't eat it. He was machmir like Rabbi Yochanan, Abaye, and Rav. And his Rav was maker like Shmuel or Rav. Okay? Here comes the third way of shinui. Hava came to Kamei de Ravina, ubachshile b'shufta de tuma ve'ochal. Oh, which means I stood, or I was standing, I was present in front of Ravina, and they used the third method. Hand or kli is really too normal. It's not crazy enough, not different enough. What did they do? They took shufta de tuma. They took the middle stick of the garlic, between in the clove, the middle of the garlic clove, between the pieces of garlic, the segments of garlic. You have that tall stick. That's what they used to mix and dilute ve'ochal. Because Achronim explained that was weird enough. It's not yad and not clear. The Chazon Ish says, or others say from here, you're allowed to do lisha. They do learn it to lisha with a knife. You usually don't do lisha with knife. You mix a salad, or we're going to talk about all kinds, or Quaker oats, or whatever you have, with your hand, or with a kli, with a spoon, not with a knife. So you want to say knife is as mishunadik as shufta de tuma. Before we switch sides to the Prima Godim, let's learn a few more lines. Wow. Halacha is like neither of those maitzim, which means at the end of the day, if you remember, if you figure out what's going on here, a lot of Amoraim here holds that both are also right, both Yad and Kli. Some Amoraim, let's say Rav, for example, it would allow you to do one way, which is what? Just with a Kli, not with the Yad, and Shmuel the other way. Says Mazuta, I don't care about that Shinoi. Yad, Kli, doesn't talk to me, doesn't make a difference. It's not what really makes a difference. Ela, ki yod itmar, like we say, but I only believe in the following statement. That's the only thing that matters. Chadal shalashem erev Shabbos, same thing. The chadal was already niloish. The chardal is nice, good chardal with liquid. The liquid was placed there when on Freitag, yeah, and we don't keep Friday, we keep Shabbos. L'mochor and Shabbos, mimacher ben be'ad ben bekli, v'notzin l'toch dvash. You can add more yad and kli, adding honey or even water. You're only diluting and adding more things. You're not making it more viscous and thicker and nicer. You're diluting it more. No, so where's the shinui? V'lo yitroif ela me'arev, apa. That's the name of the game that's mentioned in Halacha. Lo yitroif ela me'arev, which means, says the Bir Halacha, the only thing that's usher when you whatchamacallit, when you dilute something is litroif, which is called in English to whisk. When you do it very strongly, whisking, yeah, like you're making a cappuccino, that's hard, that's a problem. You're not lush. No, not even the Rabbanon. But because the action is similar to Lash, because sometimes you go like that, yes, in order to create the viscous new reality here, the new product. And therefore, when you do that, even though you're doing the opposite, you're diluting, it's also the Rabbanon, and therefore, lo yitrof bekoyach, says the Mishnah Berurah, but only me'arev, gently and softly, and that's okay. Okay? We'll make we'll take a break. You want to say something? We'll take a break now and talk about the other shita. The other shita in the Rishonim, which is Shulchan Aruch, Premagodi, v'chule, many other people besides Bir Loch and his camp. That they are the other way. They say something very mechudesh, but that's also here. They believe that chadal shalashoy does not mean that the chadal was really needed on Friday. Yeah, chadal shenilo shlasha means the chadal, like many things, has its own natural juice. Yeah, you only had the chadal grains there. You mushed them, you mashed them on Friday. Now they have their own moist, their own natural juice, and they're a little bit mixed in their own juice. But that's not called proper lisha. It's by itself. It's only by itself, internal politics, as I call it. And the first time you had water touching the chardal, which was the most crucial moment, that was on Shabbos. Ooh, how can we allow that? Aha. Must we believe like Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda that holds that nesinosoi ze lo gibuloi. It's not lishosoi. He believes that only when you mix it with not the placing of the water, the initial chemical reaction, that point of contact is not also doraisa. Only when you mix it, it's osir. And since you mix it b'shinui, yad, kli, garlic, slowly, tatutata, all those shinui make it mutter. Wow. That's a big wow. And that's a strange, very strange thing in Lisha. And you know something, to my shame and horror, I can't even tell you, even though I've learned it from a few times already, I can't really tell you why. I've seen different people, but Lisha has this thing that the shinui makes it allowed, mutter. They say the shinui godol, whatever that means. Yeah. Normally, something done b'shinui is not mutter. Yeah. If you do something in a weird, strange way, even not so professionally, not so well done, it's osir. It's not chai, but it's also darabanan. Lisha has its meshigas, excuse me for saying so, that if you do the lisha with enough shinuim, sometimes you have to add 2 or 3 shinuim together. That's a loch lemaisa. They make a formula for your baby, the materna, and all these things. They're daisa, right? Mazel tov. So now she's not holding daisa yet, right? She's only materna. Materna is good because it's soft enough. But lemaisa, when you make all these things on Shabbos, you have to know it's lisha. You're only allowed to do it with all the shinuim. The Bir Alocha says, I don't understand this. Why should it be allowed b'shinui, right? But Lamaisa, Alocha is more like the Pri Megadim, and he learns that this is Lisha. What's happening in Shabbos is not diluting. It's not diluting. It's Lisha itself. Because it's done in a strange way, it makes it not only potter, but mutter. There's a lot of sform written about this sugya and the sugya in Kufta involved. Basically, that's the modern crazy thing about Lisha, that if you have enough shinuim, the shinuim are so significant, they make up for babies more, all these things that make Lisha mutter b'shinui. And that's the pashtus what the Sugi is saying. Yeah. I don't know if it's pashtus, but that's how the many Rishon Mechonim learn it. And let's continue with that in mind. Oh, Shachlaim, even the Mishnah Berurah, by the way, doesn't argue, whatever, we'll leave the Mishnah Berurah now. Shachlaim are cress or leeks, one of the two. Sheshachkon me'erev Shabbos, you ground them and you mash them erev Shabbos. So now you have those very, very small pieces of vegetable. You're allowed to add oil and vinegar. According to the Mishnah Brura, there was already something done before. According to Megodim, no. Now starts Elisha. This is the first point of contact, first moment on Shabbos is the first date, the first shidduch between the liquid and solids, and it's okay. Umamshich l'tochen amisa, you're allowed to add onto that mint. However, how comes it's allowed? Allowed to do Lisha on Shabbos, a chiloni, velo yitrof elo me'arev. Aha, here is a rescue. As long as you're not doing it, you're not doing it briskly, whisking, you mix it slowly, that's considered as, according to Megodim, shinui. It's lisha b'shinui and it's allowed. According to Mishnah Berurah, it's not lisha b'shinui. It's diluting in a way that's not similar to lisha. Diluting is not lisha. That's why it's allowed. Next piece, tum, garlic. Anybody that ever crushed garlic knows. I used to do it. I had a diet like that many times. You have the pieces of that are left, the actual shum, and there's liquid there too. There's a bit of liquid. Shum sheriskoi, there's a bit of liquid with the solid together. Merev Shabbos. Lamacho noisan otochu poil v'grisin. That's very interesting. There's no water here. No, this is a new kind of lash. The natural juices of the garlic, you now mix them on Shabbos with poil v'grisin, all types of legumes, with like all kinds of poil or beans, the small beans, and grisin, the lentils. You're not allowed to make to grind to mix them strongly. As long as you're doing slowly, it's called shinu. This is a new kind here. That seems more like potato salad or egg salad. You have a lot of small pieces with mayonnaise. Yeah, it's not mamish l'klisha, but it could be an issue. I'm not saying if it's mutar osur, you're allowed to do it b'shinu in Shabbos. Yeah, but what's a shinu? Here the shinu is you mix it slowly. Umamshich es amita l'soichon, and after that you're also allowed to mamshich to add some amita into them. My amita, what's amita? Ninya. What's ninya? Ninya is what's ninya? Ninya here means mint. I know ninya is is mint. In this case, ninya is not a little girl. It's mint. From here we know that mint is good, is healthy, tasty, together with the tachlaim, which may be cress. Yeah? So that's basically it. Halacha l'maisa, I'm not doing halacha l'maisa in lash, no way. But conceptually, again, if we follow the Pri Megodim, which the Mishnah Berurah himself in the Mishnah Berurah, another Bir Halacha also admits, that halacha seem that all the poskim seem to be more like the like the Pri Megodim. What? Shinui, if you have enough shinuyim that are far-fetched enough, sometimes you need more than one together, sometimes you have to use the wrong thing, the finger, and also do it crisscross, not like that, all kinds of ways. If you do one or more true shinuyim, then lisha all of a sudden becomes allowed lemaisa. That's a chidush by lisha more than other melachos. Usually that's not the case. Usually shinu means it's potter but not mutter. Weiter. The oisin anoimolin b'Shabbos, yeah? What an anoimolin? We saw in the Mishnah, anoimolin is a meichel, is a kind of mixture, yeah? It's a concoction, a potion, and those anoimolin are allowed to be done on Shabbos, and tonu abonon, oisin anoimolin b'Shabbos. What does it mean? Anoimolin are, as we're going to see, a mixture of wine, honey, and peppers, yeah? The pepper seeds. And what's the chiddush allowed to make them on Shabbos? Because it first of all says you usually make them in big amounts. So if you do it on Shabbos, even though you're doing it for Shabbos, because you're doing a big amount, it looks like and it feels like it may come to really prepare for after Shabbos. And it's out of tircha to do it. If you're toreach and you're toreach for later, for after Shabbos, it's also. However, you are allowed to do normal on Shabbos. We're not concerned about all that. The Ma'aser Normalin is normal. It's not anomaly, it's normal. Anomalin. Anomalin is normal to drink on Shabbos, and also it's not considered as a medication or anything strange. It's a thing you drink on Shabbos. You make a big amount, make a big amount. So what? Something will be left over for later. However, the en oisin aluntis. Aluntis you're not allowed to make. What's aluntis? Aluntis is similar to normalin, but the huge difference is aluntis is something done for refuah. It's not some regular food for or drink for healthy people. It's exclusively for cooling down a person after the mikveh. Yeah, it's a cooling down mashke, not a nice breezer, a coke. No, it's something done just to cool you down. It's not even so tasty as we'll see later. It's something that's very, very strong, very potent. And the idea is to get you back to your senses, to shock you if you're a little drowsy or after mikveh or faintish. Yeah, it's like a shot of energy drink, but not necessarily a tasty one. And therefore, it's considered to be a refuah, and that's the other side of the border from a numalin. That's already also to do. There's a numalin, there's a luntis. How do you do this? How do you make that? A numalin is yainu dvashu pilpilin. Wine, honey, and pilpilin. They're nice, they're tasty, they're good, they may be healthy. They're not considered as refuah. You can make them on Shabbos. Big amount, big amount. Some tanoim, if you remember, limited us on the amounts, but we don't. What's a luntis? What's a forbidden one? A luntis yain yoshon, old wine. What's old wine? Stronger, strong wine. Umain, slulin, and you have to have water that's very clear. Vafarsimon, you can feel it's more medicinal, right? The wine has to be very old. The water has to be super, crystal clear. And a farsimon is a kind of oil, not necessarily tasty. The avdil bei masusa lemekar. And the main usage of it was to drink it after the Beis HaMerchatz, to cool yourself down after you've been to the Beis HaMerchatz. You're in a hot schwitz house, in a sauna, now drink something cold to balance the heat. Omar Rav Yosef's personal experience with that drink, Zim Nachada, one time, only Svosa Marukva Lebebani. I followed Marukva to the mikveh, to the bathhouse. Kinafki, when we left, Asoy Ashkian, he came and he made us drink, was mashkias, he made us drink chamra. Some people don't have the gist of chamra. Had kasa, he gave us 1 cup, 1 glass of that aluntis, the potent, powerful aluntis, v'chashi mibinta de oishi v'atufra de kari. And I felt it so strong, so like almost aggressive from the hair of my head. I'm looking for hair, yeah? From the hair on my head all the way to the toenail. So strong and like, wow, I almost died, Rashi says. The Ashken Kasa Achrina had given me 1 more cup of that. Having Mistapina, I would have been scared, I would be afraid. Dilma Menakul Mizchusa Dalmadosi. Maybe they're taking away from Mizchusa Velamabo. It was life endangering. Yeah, it was so potent, so crazily strong, a shot of this alcoholic thing, which is just for a refuah. I thought I'm going to die. And if they gave me 1 more cup, and I would have survived, they would have taken off my schus from Elam Abba. Correct the Gemara about Marukva, the Shati Kol Yoima. Marukva, the host, he took them to the Mismedrash, he gave them a nice cup. Marukva drank it every day. Nothing seemed to be happening to him. Zog the Gemara, Shan Marukva the Dashbe. Marukva is used to it. He's used to it, yeah? You give me one cup, one glass of whiskey, I go look and pour him. Now people can handle the whole bottle, nothing happens to them. These things are very individual. Marukva was very used to that kind of drink. So for him, very good. Mashenkin, for the other Meroim, that was a big thing. And therefore, that comes to show us, by the way, this story is not just an interesting, exotic story. The stories you're telling us how really it wasn't tasty, wasn't nice. That's why it's defined as refuah. One would say to us, it sounds, us Westerners, it's a cool drink to drink after the hot bath. We imagine all these, tequila, brandy, whatever, the cold cocktail, no, it wasn't. It was really hard to drink, which already sets it apart from an umalin into the part of the pharmacy already. Yeah, and Mimele on Shabbos, you're allowed to make that. You're not allowed to make medicine on Shabbos. Atzlachu bracha tomorrow. Everybody in Torah time should know, and everybody here should know. Bas komas, all people of the shir. We're going to have Mitzvah Hashem starting Psochim only from now till I'm still allowed to come and give shir here before Pesach. We're going to have the first few dapim of Psochim. Yeah, the things that are relevant to the sugyas of Psochim, B'dika, Bitul, to understand better the essence of Biur Chometz, B'dika, and Bitul. We know what we're doing. Hopefully, a little bit of halachic touch here and there. So be with us tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. I'm missing a wedding for this year tomorrow. Yeah, because we're starting a new thing. So, shkoich and be matzliach. May we be zoichet to bring Korban Pesach this year.
Amen.
Shkoich atzlochu v'rocha. Thank you. Thank you for coming. A good tavach. Me'atchala, yeah. Me'atchala until Pesach. Until